penetrating and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teachings. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understandings of the teachings and practice, it's offered on the basis of dana paramita. Dana being a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this is done without the expectation of anything in return when the opportunity arises. And those who share the teachings of Great Tree do so on a dana basis, and you can support their practice by giving what you can. Today's guest, Vincent Moore, has shared his Venmo information in the chat. So if you're able to support his practice, you can send some dana to that Venmo. Speaking of, our conversation today is going to be a discussion and reflection about our recent mountain seat ceremony, Shinsanshiki. And Vincent is going to be leading the discussion. He's a media specialist and creative consultant at Good for Nothing Ideas. He has a master's degree in Buddhist Studies from the Institute of Buddhist Studies and is the creator and host of the podcast Paths of Practice, which features interviews with Buddhists from all over the world. And he will be speaking with our abbess, Reverend Teijo Munnich, who is the founder and abbess of Great Tree Women's Temple and disciple and Dharma heir of Dainin Katagiri Roshi. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here, and many congratulations to Reverend Teijo and to the Great Tree Zen Women's Temple on not just the mountain seat ceremony, but also on the 20th anniversary. I'm just very happy to hear about this very momentous time and to be a part of the discussion of it, and also to be able to witness so many wonderful moments within your Sangha. So thank you for welcoming me. I wanted to I was very grateful to be able to witness via Zoom the ceremony, the Shinsanshiki, and in preparation for our discussion today, I also watched some of the archived Dharma talks that were given by people that have experienced some mountain seat ceremonies firsthand or have played a role in coordinating them. And one of the first questions that I wanted to ask was based on something that Reverend Shosan Victoria Austin had mentioned. And this is to contextualize it. She had mentioned that the mountain seat ceremony is not an event. It's more of a transmission of entrustment. And it's the entrustment to the teacher and to the Sangha. And when that happens, everything becomes new. And I was wondering, just this having happened earlier this month, how does it feel? Like how does the Sangha feel? How does the role of abbess feel? And is there any noticeable difference now that we've been a couple weeks separate from the event?
Well, the major difference is that we aren't doing any more planning. And right now, there's a level of exhaustion that it's hard to notice if there's any difference. But I did notice this morning when I was sitting that there was this kind of deep feeling that was kind of starting to come up as the stress goes away. This deep feeling of joy or something, gratitude for just the bringing a community together for a ceremony is quite a awesome experience. And Genjo and I experienced this in Los Angeles in 2023, was it? A couple of years ago. 2022, right? Because you ordained in 2022. And it was a big precept ceremony out at Shinsanshiki, the first Soto Zen temple in the United States. And just
just the effort and the coming together of this big ceremony. There were 180 people or something like that. 80 priests and 100 people from various sanghas. And we came back, it was Genjo and Reynolds and Chimyo and myself. We all had different parts, and you know, there was a lot of stress involved in learning things, especially for those of us that were kind of supposed to be leading it. But in the end, you know, everything kind of came together. And I feel like that's what happened with this ceremony, with these ceremonies. It wasn't just one, there were 5 ceremonies actually. And because, you know, everybody that had put themselves into some aspect of preparing just went right into motion. And I was just, you know, I was saying to Quinn as she came in today, how grateful I was about how seamlessly she did her part and Joe did his part, and Genjo's friends, I was talking to one of Genjo's friends from the monastery who came from California. I was talking to him yesterday, expressing my appreciation for him, and he said it was like they had learned this stuff in the monastery together, and then they came together and saw how it was put into action, kind of, you know, saw how it all worked, and then all the priests that came we'd all had the same kind of training. We practiced together, and just, you know, all day rehearsals and just lots of things just made it all kind of gel in the end in a way that felt almost very natural. But then afterwards, the stress hit, and Joe and I, and probably Quinn too, we've just been sleeping a lot.
And well deserved.
Self-care.
Yeah. And all that planning certainly uh, was like paid off. I mean, it was such a seamless event. I mean, like the way that also you were contending with elements too, because it was outdoors, and there was like some wind that would come by, and you managed to make the sound, like as far as like I was concerned, I could hear the speakers and the various elements of the ceremony really well. And it just looked beautiful. And I think it was like a 63-degree day too. It just looked like it was a really nice, beautiful morning and afternoon, and so it was just a real treat to be able to witness that, and also too, yeah, but like I know that like days and days of rehearsing and making sure that you're coordinating with all these visiting teachers, and actually, and on that note too, I know that there were quite a few people that were in attendance, and Reverend Jimyo was there, and I saw some other people, Akiba, I believe, and Reverend Akiba. And what was it like to be around so many friends and Dharma siblings, and just them maybe may or may not be visiting the space for the first time, maybe visiting North Carolina for the first time. I was just kind of curious what it felt like to welcome people in, and to be able to show them what you've been building all this time.
I think it was really exciting, and I think that for me it was. I think that it, you know, without realizing it beforehand, very consciously, I felt like the community the Sangha was so well represented, you know, age-wise and involvement-wise, practice-wise, even aside from all of the priests that showed up. But I think there was something so comforting about having the particular people that were that were the particular priests that showed up, that were able to make it, because we've done ceremonies before. We did the big thing out in LA, and people kind of, not instinctively, but kind of knew what to do. And like for example, what I mentioned about Genjo's friends from the monastery, they just knew what to do. They just filled in all the cracks. And actually the woman, the nun, and you probably didn't even see her because she was so ninja about her movements. She was just in and out. And I always knew where she was, but somehow she was in charge, and she was the one that put us through, a day and a half of rehearsals. And that was very, they say dress rehearsal is good. If it's a bad dress rehearsal, it's a good performance. And it was like Friday was such a bad dress rehearsal. And I didn't really think about it. Oh, it's a good performance. I was like, what do I have to work on? But she just took us through it. She didn't kind of say, oh, we got to work on this or anything. She just kind of walked us through the whole thing. And then the next morning we went through it again. And of course it was much better the next day. But, she just did it so well. And she was around kind of moving things and fixing things. And that's the same thing that Genjo's friends were doing too. They were just kind of filling in, making sure everything was there. And the drumming at the end was one of his friends. I don't know if you could hear the drumming. Could you hear it?
I think so. I think sometimes like the microphone will pick up some things and not other things, but yeah, there's a lot.
There's a very specific kind of drumming that's done with the Heart Sutra. And as you probably heard in one of the talks, well, maybe it wasn't in one of the talks, maybe it was in one of our meetings. Ejo, who has been advising us through, Ejo McMullen, has been advising us through this, and actually, he gave one of the talks. He translated that ceremony from Japanese to use for his own, and he wrote most of that narration, which was a big, big help for us. But he told us at the end, you're disseminating it's kind of like, I think, giving back the merit. That's the way I look at it. At the end of anything that you do in this practice, you just let go of it and share it. We do it at the end of all of our talks and everything. And so he's, and we experienced this in LA at this ceremony, at this Jukai ceremony. And the way that it's usually done is you take the whole body of the Heart Sutra teachings, which is enormous, what comes from India. What we chant in terms of the Heart Sutra is an abbreviated version that was actually created in China, and now it's gone back to India. But so this whole body of Heart Sutra, of the Heart Sutra teachings, or of the Prajna teachings, is it's stacks and stacks of these books. The Japanese sutra books, you can kind of fan them. And so they're passed out. And when I did it in LA, they gave us each 3 stacks, and each stack had 10 books in it. And there's this, you shout, and you fan it in 3 different directions, and hopefully you don't drop it. And if you drop it, there's a certain way to pick it up. But so it's very festive, and what you're doing is you're kind of sharing all of the Prajna teachings with all beings. So that's the spirit of it. But of course, we don't have that set of books. It's pretty expensive, and you have to get it from Japan. And so he said, if you don't have that, you can do it in another way. You can find another way. So I said, well, I love that drumming that goes with the Heart Sutra, so why don't we do that? And then we had to chant in Japanese because the drumming goes with the rhythm of the Japanese language. And of course, everyone there knew it in Japanese, so we were able, so we chanted it 3 times, and I had gone to a play. Two of some people from our family meditation were in a family play in Asheville. I'd gone a couple weeks before, and it was The Wizard of Oz. And every time that Belinda came out, these 2, young people dressed in black came out with bubble machines, and so there were bubbles all around Belinda all the time. And I started to think about it, and I thought, well, that would be a good way to kind of send out the any merit that was gained, and also it was a great way to include the kids, because kids passed out little bubble what were like vessels with bubbles in them, just tiny little things, to everyone. And my niece was there with her 2 kids, and the 9-year-old, she's 9 or 10 years old, she came up to me afterwards and she said, "Did we do a good job of passing out the bubbles?" So this was a very important way for them to be part of it, which I hadn't even occurred to me. And Genjo's mother donated a bubble machine, a really good bubble machine. So one of the young women walked around with the bubble machine. And so that was, I don't know how I got into that, but that was for me, that was a really fun part of it. And Cohen, Reverend Cohen, who, he was also here, but he was kind of behind the scenes because he came from Canada, and he had all kind of glitches in his travels, so he wasn't able to be at the rehearsals. So he just kind of filled in various places. He said to me afterwards, he said, that may become a tradition in America, the bubbles.
Yeah, I think that there's something very special and fun and festive about the bubbles. But you're right, like they immediately get carried by the wind, and they go in all directions, and they go with the wind. So I suppose that maybe through there might be some analysis you can do with like wind movements and things like that. But to me, they feel very scattered and very random, and they kind of go all directions and all different heights and speeds. So it's and yeah, it's just a visual marvel. They kind of glisten and shine. They kind of have that kind of maybe those pure lands, that kind of feeling as they kind of go outwards. And I watched Reverend Koan's Franz's video as well, and he was talking about this something that you've been kind of speaking about just now about there are these standards, there are these things that you have to meet to make it a kind of official in an administrative sense, having a certain number of ordained people there, having certain things happen in a certain function in a certain way. But also there is some space, like with the bubbles and maybe with the drumming, as opposed to with like other elements of like the fanning of the sutras. There are certain things that you can amend or make unique to the space and to the mountain seat ceremony for the temple where you are. And so it's great to hear that there is that space that you took. And yeah, like I've seen some other mountain seat ceremonies in other places, and just the very nature of Great Tree doing it outside is also something that's a little bit different and a little bit special. But something else that came up in his Dharma talk was he was talking about and he offered an invitation of during the ceremony to take a moment and to ask, what is going on? Like, what is the point of this? Like, why are we doing this? And to rest in the intimacy of that question. And I was wondering if I mean, I know there was plenty to think about, there's plenty going on, but if there was a moment that came up for you where you asked yourself that question, and what may or may not have come up as an answer for you when you were kind of going about the whole ceremony.
Actually, somebody asked me that question. What are we doing here?
Oh, right.
And I forgot about what Koan-san said, but so unfortunately I didn't rest in the intimacy of the moment. But I think I was talking to Doke, who is a monk, he's usually everywhere. I don't know why he didn't end up at this ceremony, but anyway, I was talking to him at lunch a couple of years ago at one of our meetings in LA. I think it was him. Somebody said to me, this is really a celebration. And when I do something like this, I have to kind of think of it as a piece of choreography so that it has a little bit of a flow for me. Otherwise, I don't know how to frame it. And so for me, it was like a dance. I kept thinking, what are the movements? What is the flow? And but I think my response to that question is, this is a party. And I thought, well, that's afterwards. I thought, well, maybe I should have just said celebration or something a little more respectful. But I think those kinds of references for me help me to relax into the dance. Otherwise, it becomes a heady kind of thing. If I think of it as a party, my body relaxes a little bit. And for me, in this practice, if we don't include the body, it's just very stressful.
And there was a palpable amount of joy, and I was getting this experience from the distance of being online, but there was like this sense of joy that was happening, that when you said that it's a party, it really did. It matched that moment for me. Like the way that I was watching it, it really did feel like it was a joyful, smiley kind of occasion, with grounded in a great deal of respect and an appreciation for the moment of it being this like this ascension, this mountain seat ceremony. But there was this like this looseness that was really wonderful to watch. And during that space, I wanted to kind of get into that Dharma combat element. So in the opening remarks of the ceremony, there was this statement about what was going on was there was a stepping again into not knowing that was going on. And that felt like a little bit of a theme throughout the ceremony that day, because during the Dharma combat, you were asked things like, how do we become the mountain? And you said, I don't know. And have you ascended the mountain, or the mountain ascended you? I don't know. And I think that these are spontaneous questions, these are spontaneous answers, and it, all eyes on you, and that there's a lot going on. And I do think that there is a great authenticity to the comfortability of having a response that is, I don't know. But now, having some distance from the event, or maybe even some recollection of like what it felt like when you were saying those things. I wanted to kind of tease out a little bit more what is meant by that not knowing, I suppose. And like, I guess, what do you mean by I don't know? But in a sense of the power and the impact of those questions.
I think it just, I like the phrase that Sansanin uses, only don't know. and I also like Rilke's poem about living the question. And so when Genja asked particularly about what does it mean to become the mountain, that came up, when Cohen mentioned it in his talk last year. Well, was it last year? Yeah, it was last year, a year ago, last summer. And I remember when he said it, it just penetrated very deeply. And I thought, wow, I felt what he was saying. And then it became a question for me. And I think through the whole practice period that we started in April, and which we actually, some of us committed to the whole practice period, called Keisei Ango. Ango means practice period. And it's done, it's when there's a shuso. That's my understanding. And we needed to have this, needed to have a shuso, a head monk, for this ceremony. It's just part of the whole thing. Which Genjo, he did that part. But so that was a question for me throughout the entire practice period, actually. And I know that it had to do with something about deepening my own practice and touching that part of me that said yes to ordination. That's a part of me that I can't make myself touch. But yeah, like Roka says, just live the question and don't try to answer it. And the last Dokusan I did with my teacher in Japan, Harada Seke Roshi, I went to him, and I was trying to find what my question was before I went into Dokusan, and all kinds of questions came up, and I kept thinking, well, yeah, but if I just do Zazen, everything will fall into place, and the question will be answered. I knew that, and he had said that to me at one point, and I was like, oh, yeah, I know that. But this time I went in there, and he said, what's your question? And I said, well, I have a lot of questions, but I know that if I just do Zazen, that's enough. The answers will come. And he said, the question is the answer. And I think that goes along with what Roka is saying, because if you just take in the question, and one of the things I started doing after Seki Roshi said that to me was I started taking any questions that came up and making them into a statement. And it was really interesting to do that because when you make a statement, you kind of embody the question, If you ask the question, I find that I put it outside of myself, I'm kind of chasing after it. So I was kind of trying to embody that question. But at that point, I hadn't really come to any kind of answer. And
Yeah,
so,
mhm.
yeah.
No, I think I didn't mean to do, please. Oh, okay. I appreciate that. I mean, like I know that I'm kind of putting you on the spot with with the depth of those questions and those answers, but I really do appreciate your response being that, and that invitation to rephrase or reframe the question being the answer, especially because of the nature of these. And I remember watching from that Koan's Dharma talk, talking about how the impact of the inner journey that's going on. There's this administrative thing that's happening where the abbess, the new abbess, is going into assuming the seat of the abbess, and or otherwise establishing for Great Tree like having the initial mountain seed ceremony. And there are a lot of things that are moving pieces that are happening on that level. And then also, but there's also this inner journey that's happening. And just the way that you were speaking about it, it seems like question, the doubts or the questions or the things that might come up for you are important enough as just the experiences. It just feels like those things that come up are the important things to rest with and to have settle. So I appreciate you offering that. And we were talking a little bit about kind of relationship with choreography and with moving around the spaces. And this being a space that you're very familiar with, I believe Shosan Victoria Austin had mentioned this as well. But there are these moments; these are very personal moments. And I also don't mean to pry, because I understand it to be private to semi-private. But there are these moments where you go around and you are addressing altar spaces around the grounds around the ceremony where they are, because it's not just the main altar. There are other things elsewhere. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to share some of those inner statements that you had when you were approaching certain altars, if there's one altar that felt particularly meaningful or significant when you approached it, or if there are, if you feel comfortable sharing kind of like how you felt about each one.
Well, let's see. There were four, right? Yeah. When first addressing the Buddha, that Buddha statue, I don't know if you could see it. That was given to us a few years ago. Could you see it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's huge. And when it was offered, I wanted to say no because we don't have a lot of space around here, but and I hadn't seen it, but I knew it was big. But I couldn't refuse a Buddha that was being offered to a temple. Right? So it kind of wasn't up to me. But it turned out to be a really majestic kind of statue to have on the it's called a shumidan. It's not exactly an altar. It's a, what would you call it? Kind of a platform. It's kind of an altar. It's kind of the altar in the ceremony hall, but it's, as you saw, it's kind of tiered, and usually there's some steps or kind of ladders that go up, so you can climb up onto it, and that's actually where a lot of like food offerings and things are made. We didn't do it in that way, but they're put up on top, and it's quite elaborate in the Japanese monastery. Ours was a series of tables covered with a tarp, but it looked really good. People commented on how beautiful it was, but so I don't remember what I said at that one. But then the next one was, just probably expressing appreciation to Buddha for the Dharma. And the next one was Earth Spirits altar, and there's a particular a god that's connected with that called Daigen Shuri Bosatsu in Japanese. But the one that we used, we don't actually have one of those statues, and I don't know whether you could get a glimpse of that on Zoom or not, but it's a very standard. It comes from Japan. It comes from China originally. So even in Japanese temples, you have this Chinese god, spirit god. But it turned out that my acupuncturist had a couple that she brought back from China, or that she got from her teacher, who's Chinese. Actually, that's what she told me afterwards. And she let us borrow one. There was a lot of ceremony around it, letting him know where he was going and offering incense and everything. And I picked him up, and we had an eye-opening ceremony here for him and everything. But the really cool thing was we set up our altar. We set up the shumidan. The Buddha is supposed to be facing south, right? Is that south? Mm-hmm. Yeah, south. So we oriented it in that way. I'm very into the energetics that comes from Chinese Chinese Buddhism, Chinese Zen, they do it in Japan. They follow the same system in Japan too. But in relation to that, there's usually to the right as you're facing the Buddha is the earth spirit's guide, and to the left is the ancestors' altar, and behind is a couple rooms, and it goes way back, and then one of the rooms has the what do you call them? Memorial tablets for the members of the community that have died. It's just full of all these memorial tablets. And then in the back room is the memorial tablets of all of the former abbots or abbesses. Well, we don't have a ceremony hall, so but we do have an altar that's for my teacher, Katagiri Roshi. And so we use that altar, and we put it behind the tree, behind the Shimida. So to the right, there was a tree that was cut down recently, and so there was just a stump left. It was a dead tree. And so we used the stump for the earth spirits altar. I thought that was appropriate. And just kind of thanking the earth spirits for being present and for taking care of the land. And then the next one was the ancestors' altar, and that's represented usually with Bodhidharma, who is considered the ancestor who brought Zen, brought Chan Buddhism to China, or not brought, but created. He brought Buddhism from India to China. Although I just have to always mention that Thich Nhat Hanh said it was someone who was Vietnamese, who was 300 years prior to Bodhidharma, that brought Chan Buddhism. So anyway, but I discovered through Ejo actually that Bodhidharma's teacher was a woman called Prajnatara. Unfortunately, the people that set up that altar forgot to put up our picture of Prajnatara, but we have a picture of Prajnatara for the ancestors' altar. But they used the little Bodhidharma statue instead, which is kind of the traditional Japanese way to do it. And then, so I was thanking Prajnatara for sending Bodhidharma to China so that it could go to Japan and come to us. Because the story is that she told him to go to China and I guess convert the heathens or something. I don't know what the spirit behind that was. But then the last one was the founder's altar. And in a sense, you could say I was the founder of Great Tree, but actually I have gratitude to my teacher. That's why we have a founder's altar for him. And we have a large memorial tablet that was made by some of our members, Priscilla and Genjo Yokote. And two of their daughters were part of the ceremony too. And so we used that, and we had an altar table. And so thanking Katagiri Roshi for awakening in me first the spirit of practice, and then he actually asked me if I wanted to ordain, which my head said no, but something came up that said yes, and I really don't know where that came from. That's that's the thing that I feel like we touch in this practice. He asked me on the third day of a sesshin, which is probably the most vulnerable day, when you're sitting a sesshin. The first couple of days your mind is still very active, but by the third day you kind of worn yourself out trying to distract yourself from what wants to come up. So he brought it up on the third day of sesshin, and my response just came from somewhere else. So I was just expressing my gratitude to him for kind of, you know, striking me with his lightning bolt wisdom in such a way that I couldn't say no.
So, yeah.
Those were the-
Yeah, it's thank you for going over that. There's so much meaning in each, and it's wonderful to hear your perspective on some of those, especially that the one that has to do with the ancestors. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Prajnatara connection because, Great Tree Zen Women's Temple. This is something that Shosan Victoria Austin talked about, but she was acknowledging that there is this wonderful precedent in Mahaprajapati and uh, and the work that you're doing to establish what you're doing. I know that Great Tree is an inclusive space. Anyone can come and attend and be there. But I was wondering, how did it feel to, have this mountain seat ceremony as a women's refuge, as something that is the honoring the women ancestors that have come before, and did that did something in those did something within that uh, feeling come up for you? Was there an impact, or did you kind of identify something very powerful about that within the ceremony?
Well, I think a lot of the reason Great Tree came up, and Great Tree, or what I used to call a women's practice center, also came up a little bit like a lightning bolt for me when I was at Tassajara. And I couldn't get it out of my mind and had to proceed with it because I knew that otherwise I'd be laying on my deathbed wishing I had tried. And it was that much, I felt like, but also I felt that it was something that was needed to bring about a little bit of balance in the Zen world. And I didn't really want to do this ceremony. Chimyo really kept after me for many years trying to get me to do it. And finally, when I agreed to do it, and what I realized is that it's really important as to have that kind of recognition from the larger Zen world, which is still predominantly run by men, and I think is lacking some balance, that we as women have to find some way to share our insights in such a way that they will be understood and incorporated. Incorporated is kind of not a good word, but kind of integrated into the larger Zen world. I think we need that kind of balance, not just, this is not just something for women, it's something for men too, because we all have masculine and feminine in us, in some sort of balance, I believe. And just to, my experience in the Zen world from day one was that where are the women? I remember asking that question when I first started at Minnesota Zen Center. And that's, that was my experience with all my training. And then I come to Asheville, and most of my students were men at the Zen Center in Asheville. So, the question kept looming up. And so I guess I hadn't really thought about trying to be accepted by the powers that be, so to speak, because there were a lot of questions when I started Great Tree from Japan. But that it is important to be recognized in that way, And Akiba Roshi is a good friend, as he mentioned in his talk, I think, in his congratulatory talk. We go back to practicing together at Tassajara when he first came to the United States. And so, from that perspective, I think it was important for him to be here, but I also, I feel like because Akiba Roshi and I practiced together, and we're just literally on the same time, so that we were aware of each other. We weren't right next to each other, but we were on the same time. That he knows something about my practice, and I know something about his practice, and we respect each other's practice very deeply. It's not just a matter of kind of an intellectual acceptance. It's a deeper acknowledgement of that we're in this for very important reasons. And so for him to come and for him to want to come was very meaningful and very supportive for me, because he really does hold a very high position, not only in North American Zen, but in his relationship with Japan. And so that's an important acceptance of women's practice, which is not so much acknowledged in Japan.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing for to have seen that too, because I saw him there, and to know this much, a little bit more about your relationship with him, but also to just to know that there's this recognition of why you're practicing in the first place, that deep meaning, and that it is there's a great appreciation for each other for what both of you are doing in your practices. It's really special. And also too, just going back to Reverend Chimyo, because I know that there was this encouragement to get the mountain seat ceremony going, and I think that there was, I believe you had shared somewhat of a story about making a 20-year-old okesa, and I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing like what that experience was, because I think that you might have been you were wearing it, I think, during the mountain seat ceremony, and I believe it was a 20-year or so effort to sew that together. I just wanted to know if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit about the experience of wearing something that had so much effort and time and commitment in.
Well, it was a 25-row okesa. Broxu is a 5-row okesa. Or it's not an okesa, it's a small kesa. The big one, that's traditionally it's part of the mountain seat ceremony, but we didn't really have to have it. And it didn't take 20 years to sew it. It took 20 years for her to convince me to do the ceremony. But she just orchestrated the sewing of it, although she was working on it every week, and people came and sewed on it. I took some pieces to Minnesota, and Mrs. Katagiri put some stitches into it. She was almost blind, but she put a few stitches into it. My friend from Switzerland that I was in the monastery with, she sent a piece with some stitches in it to put on it. And so it had a lot of stitches from a lot of people, but it's quite a deal. You chant on each stitch. I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha. So it was quite a project, and I was amazed that it got made. But she insisted on making it. I told her we don't have to have it for the ceremony, but somehow she felt it needed to be made. So to me, it represented Sangha. I think one of the reasons I didn't discourage her from doing it was because I felt like it was a great opportunity for people to come together and do something, stick together, something meaningful. And that it really was that. So for me, that okesa represents Sangha. And it was made, for great tree. So it will be passed from abbess to abbess and great tree. So it belongs to the temple.
And I think that there was something that Koan Franz had said, Reverend Koan, he had mentioned that there's something special about perceiving the robe as one robe. It's the Buddha's robe, and the temple as being as any temple as being the temple, or the one temple. And there's something really visually powerful just from observing about you wearing it, you wearing the okesa that is stitched together by the sangha that had to come together, and you wearing it as you ascend the seat, because it really did weave so many different elements into the same action of like it really felt like this was a sangha moment, this was an abbess moment. It just felt like it was a very uh, visually powerful thing, and maybe in a not to be reductive, but like in a theatrical sense, it just has you can like analyze and pick apart a lot of different places of meaning from it. So it just was a very visually striking component. And I know that we are coming close to time, but I wanted to ask more of like a looser question. And it was something that came up during the ceremony that was, I think it was while you were behind, like outside of the camera's view, and you had made reference to your monk's bag. I think you had like there was like some like maybe a backpack or something like that that had supplies in it, or it had something to do with maybe preparations for the ceremony. I was just curious, like what are the contents of your monk's bag, if you don't mind sharing? I don't, I don't want to pry too much, but what is that? What's going on in there?
Well, I always wanted one of those. It's called a kesagori. And Chino, someone gave one to Chino, but I never had one. But this particular one came from my friend Emil Nakayama. What's her last name? I can't remember her. She's one of my Dharma sisters. She was planning to come to this ceremony, but unfortunately, she's been ill and was not able to come. But she's one of my Dharma sisters that was ordained by Katagiri Roshi. And she went to Japan for her training and ended up marrying the Ino and becoming a temple wife for 30 years. And her husband died about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time she said to me, do you need any robes? And she ended up furnishing almost all of Genjo's robes for going to the temple. She just sent them to us because her husband had a lot of robes, a lot of extra robes, and so she sent us a couple boxes at that time. And then when it came for the mountain seat ceremony, she said, "Is there anything that you need I can help you with?" And so I sent her the list, and one of them was a kesagori. So that is her husband's kesagori. And typically, I know and Genjo might be able to answer this better than me, but I know one thing you have in the kesagori is a certain amount of yen to pay for your funeral. And you may have noticed that on the front of it, it is like a backpack. On the front of it is the bowls are tied. And I haven't taken this apart because I was afraid I couldn't get it back together. There's a certain way of tying it. And because I don't have one, I never learned how to do it. But anyway, now I have a kesagori. And I can't tell you what's inside of it because I haven't taken it apart. But that is one thing I know. Do you know if anything else sits inside of it?
No. Yeah, I've never opened it up for that same reason. I haven't trusted myself to be able to put it back together.
Right. So, yeah, that's about all I can tell you. I guess that probably, I would say, if I was putting mine together, I would put my lineage papers in it. My ordination lineage papers, and probably Dharma transmission papers, Not sure. They're all folded up into little packets. So I'm guessing that that's the kind of, it's things that are really of great value that you know, want to have with you. And maybe anything else that, you know, was meaningful to me. I'll have to think about that. I'm glad you asked that question because that's, if I can figure out, or if I can find somebody that can help me put it back together, learn how to put it back together, I will take it apart to see what's in the back to you.
Yeah, yeah, an unboxing video or something, as you can kind of see what's going on inside. Yeah, no, I was just curious, and thank you for going into that. I mean, yeah, to if you're carrying something on your back that has you know, so many essentials, and then to know also too that it comes to you know, having enough money for a funeral should an event happen while you're traveling or whatever it is. It's a very significant thing to carry. I'm not sure how you'd like things to come to a close. I'm also happy to continue asking questions, but I just wanted to say thank you again for this opportunity to participate in this conversation and to be able to witness the mountain seat ceremony and to see the Sangha celebrate itself and come together in such a meaningful way. And many congratulations to you, Reverend Teijo, for such a momentous time. Yeah, and thank you very much again.
Thank you. Those are really great questions. And it's nice to kind of debrief in this way. I appreciate that. And I would also just like to suggest that maybe you interview Genjo about the Dharma combat.
I would love that.
Strictly speaking, what I was doing was not Dharma combat, but what he was doing was definitely Dharma combat. And so that can be our next, your next, we'll set that up if you don't mind.
Yeah, please, yeah, I would love that. Yeah, no, I would love that. Thank you.
So anybody who's watching this video, look for the next episode.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. No, that would be wonderful. Yeah, it was an action-packed day and a lot of things for me to take in. So thank you for including me in it.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate what you've told us about how well it worked on Zoom, because I was a little curious about that. It's hard to
Yeah.
do. Yeah. Well, we can thank Quinn for doing that.
Yeah, no.
Apparently, it's a job, because a lot of people have told me they enjoyed watching it on Zoom.
Oh yeah.
We will have a video too. There was a videographer. I don't think we recorded the Zoom, right?
We did.
Oh, we did? Yeah. Oh, good. And that's going to be up under Mountain Seat Ceremony on our past speakers. Yeah. And this needs to go under Mountain Seat Ceremony too.
Okay.
So do we have any announcements?
Yes. So tomorrow is going to be family meditation. So that starts at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. This is also the beginning of a fall practice period. Is it still open to join the practice period?
Yeah, we've only done the tea, so if somebody still wants to join, they can.
Okay. Yeah, so please email me at info@greattreetemple.org if you want to join that practice period. They're continuing studying Mountains and Water Sutra if you're interested. There's also a session that's going to be next weekend, October 3rd through 8th. And there's still a few spots open, so also email me if you're interested in session. And then Reverend Teijo will also be speaking next Saturday, and the title of her talk is Faith, Awareness, and Letting Go. So that's what we have coming up this week.
Okay, should we give back the merit?
May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
You too.
Thank you.